I would like to welcome you all and have great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to our beautiful historical city, Krakow. The topic of this conference, which we all consider of the utmost importance to the future. The European and Latin American countries, though naturally having different traditions and historical, cultural and political backgrounds, maybe do share similar problems. Europe and America and Latin America are looking at each other, face each other. Does it mean confrontation? Certainly not. Anticipation? Perhaps. And if so, the anticipation of which scenario? I'm sure you will find many issues to discuss, to share our experience and views, to exchange ideas. I would like to wish you fruitful discussions, have a good time, and remember, enjoy our beautiful city. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare this conference open. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The instructions which I'm following one of Peter Smith's typologies, I think this is a kind of dicta blanda that we're operating here. So what's been suggested, which seems to me to make a lot of sense, is that we will take the papers in 3 pairs, which fall quite naturally. The first 2 dealing with the past, first in Chile and Poland, the second 2 democratization, and the third pair have in common slightly less, but there is the integration theme. And that means each paper, each speaker will get 20 minutes. Let me clarify, 20 minutes. And then we'll have the second paper, so 40 minutes of papers, and that will give us a good 40 minutes of discussion on each pair. And that will get us through to 7 o'clock. So without more ado, and I should say, I'm not going to give elaborate introductions to people. I think many of us now know each other anyway. I'll just give the name and the topic. You have the CVs if you want to follow up. So first of all, Patricio Valdivieso, the political reviews of the past in Chile.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for this invitation. My special thanks for the University of Krakow and the organization of this conference, the Institute of International Affairs, and the coordinator, Mr. Professor Dr. Stemplowski. Thank you so much. And well, my paper is about legacies of the past in human rights policies and public policies, the case of Chile, to inform, reflect, maybe compare, and through the comparison we can maybe generalize. In this presentation I will refer only to the human rights because the restrictions of time, but you have the paper to read about the public policies in economic, social public policies. Or we can, if we have time, discuss about that. Because of its past, Chile has an active participation in the international regimes of human rights protection in the United Nations right now, in the Inter-American system and the in the International Criminal Court, the Convention of Rome. Let me offer at the beginning some evidences about this issue. In her last report about the situation of the country in May 21st, 2009, the President of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, declared important things related with the human rights past of Chile and the compromise, currently compromise. We are a nation that lost liberty in one moment of its history, but reestablished the democracy and now has the human rights as pillar, as base of its international life and its international integration. In relation with international recognition and about the democracy in Chile or the economy in Chile, Chile said the President of Chile speaks always with the truth in the United Nations, in the Human Rights Council, and comments, it is different from those days in which the representatives of the country tried to hide the atrocities that occurred in Chile. Now, she said, Chile is in front of the international community transparent and encourage, promote the rights of the people inside and in the international community. And the world recognized the progresses of the country in less than 2 decades of transit from the authoritarian regime to the democracy. Maybe we have a topic to discuss. The protection of human rights is a constant work always. Chile has to improve its standards and take into consideration the international recommendation to improve its institutional system and exercise better the most unrestricted respect for the rights of the people. And she explained, the President, that as government she will insist in the creation of a defensory of the people, the Institute of Human Rights, and will expand the measures to reparation for the victims of human rights violations and their relatives in the country, inside and outside the country. Many people went outside the country. She invited to visit the Museum of the Memory for the new generations, for the young people. Very important initiative. She remembers several initiatives to participate in the legal international architecture to protect the human rights. Chile is part, I said, of the Rome Convention of Rome, 98, that created the International Penal Court. That is important because Chile didn't have one idea about the past. But in the last 20 years there were important events in the country, inside and outside of the country, and Chile came to a consensus about this, and the 2 chambers in the Congress of Chile, Senate and Chambers of Deputies, more than 2/3 of the legislators agree that Chile is inside of the Convention of Rome. And that is really important change. That was this year. Well, Chile participated in many others, for example, Convention on Elimination of all forms of discrimination, etc., etc., etc. But let me, it is not only the words of the President of Chile. In fact, another important fact is in the legacy of the human rights experiences in Chile are the institutional changes. We experienced changes of 2nd generation reforms to improve the life quality of the population in Chile, and since mid of the decade of the 90s, the Chilean judicial system experimenting one of the most important reforms of the country's history. The old inquisitorial procedure was replacing by an accusatory system with warranties of due process. We didn't have enough warranties for due process. The most important warranty to protect human rights, like in USA, Germany and other countries. While the prosecution is in charge of an autonomous authority, the warranty judges have to supervise the procedures of due process, and the judgment is made by a collegiate court. In comparison with the past, trials are public and verbal. The defense is a warranty for everybody, and that is a legacy of these human rights issues in the country, with consequence for the future. 19 years after the recovery of the democracy, Chile is still dealing with the legacies of the political violence and socio-economic changes experienced between the late 60s and the end of the military government. the political polarization process in the 60s and early 70s included many forms of political violence. This violence became systematic after the military coup of 73, when the junta militar and Pinochet, General Pinochet, became systematic, when the junta militar established a secret police that was responsible for human rights abuses as torture, executions and disappearances suffered mainly by people who identified with the political left wing or the opposition. Know about the military government that controlled the country between 73 and 90. Then came the democracy in Chile from the beginning of the 90s until now. And then began the recovery, the development of a conscience about human rights. And I will inform about some important steps in these directions. As soon as recovered democracy, Chile needed to face the consequences of political violence. In 1990, a thorough a reconciliation commission was appointed. Reparation laws between 91 and 94, political dialogue 99-2000, and a national commission on torture 2004-2005 have taken the responsibility to clarify the magnitude of human rights violations and recommending measures to help victims of those violations. Important is here, and I will summarize, then we can see the details if you want, but the legacies of this commission, the important legacies of the commissions. First of all, when the commission completed the work and submitted the findings to the president presented the report in the television apologizing on behalf of the Chilean society to the victims. And that was really important. Chile has a presidential system. Very strong, the figure of the president. And Elwin, the first president, was again the communism's, socialism's government of Unidad Popular before the military regime. But Elwin recognized that Chile had to apologize from the victims of the human rights. And after that began many measures, initiatives in the country. The report was widely distributed and discussed in the media, and many political leaders expressed concern. And came a second, the National Congress passed a resolution commending the report. That was really important. The president and all legislators of several tendencies began to improve the moral conscience in the country. Another important legacy was the reconstructions or the documentations of many cases of violations of human rights. In this time, at the beginning of the 90s, it was really difficult in Chile to have justice through first and then reconciliation, because Pinochet was in the power of the armed forces, and we had the experiences, for example, of Argentina. And the politicians in Chile were scared with the possibility that they lost the transitions to democracy. And then came a second important issue, the arrest of General Pinochet in London, 98. That was really important because Pinochet didn't continue more in the power. Pinochet was a formidable obstacle for the reconciliation in Chile, and this changed with the detention in London. Under the thesis of universal jurisdiction, one local judge in the United Kingdom began the history. One local judge. In Spain, Judge Baltasar Garzón wanted that Pinochet came to Spain to be in front of a trial, and a judge of United Kingdom began with the application of the principle of universal jurisdiction. And that was really a really important moment. Many informations of the Commission of Truth and Reconciliations began to go to the judiciary systems, and many cases began to be resolved in Chile. And slowly Chile recovery the trust in the institutions, and the victims, especially of human rights violations, were for the institutionality, the democratic institutionality in Chile. The case of Pinochet was really important in my regard, because from outside came the impulse. So that shows that in our globalized world, interdependent world, the human rights issues are not only a problem of Chile or of Germany, of Poland or other. It's a human principles and human problematic, universal problematic. Let me offer the last remarks, and I finished. First, the struggle for the protection of human rights in the time of the authoritarian regime inside and outside the country. I didn't report about that because of the time, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission were really important facts for the Chilean democracy and development. Second, the legacies are several changes in culture, norms and institutions, a new culture of human rights in the country. I work with surveys. I made a surveys and I applied the surveys for young people, for people, middle-aged people, and everybody think that never we would like to have things like in this time. That is a change of the conscience in Chile, in the political culture. Leaderships, we have the president, Michelle Bachelet. She represents powers, positions in the society, and they agree with the human protection of human rights. So, new norms and institutions. The penal reform in Chile significated many changes important for the country, not only for the institutions, for the budget of the country too. New standards to monitoring the quality of democracy in the country come from the impulse of human rights. Follow-up methodologies, for example. A Chilean way to achieve the regional integration with emphasis in human rights. Chile put the emphasis in human rights. New goals for the foreign policy of Chile, compromise with universal values, participation in humanitarian initiatives in other countries, in the United Nations, in several bodies, in the Inter-American system, etc. And support for human rights, bilateral and multilateral diplomacy, conferences, conventions, presidential summit. So the issue of human rights was a part of our history, is a part of our memory, but especially is a part of our present. Thank you very much.